Good morning, Brother Jones. I mean, Brother Christensen.
Hi, how are you, Maxi?
Very good. Good morning. Okay, thank you for meeting me with this morning. I had a wonderful conversation with my online advisor.
Oh, good.
We're wrapping up a couple of certificates this semester. That's why, and then
Okay.
planning for other things. So, one of the ambitions that I have, questions that I have to go back
hmm
to the I wrote some questions here, and it was giving me some problems on how I'm going to comprehend this. So I know I need to go back a couple of weeks to the um, one of those tests I did really bad on, or maybe it was the last one. Um, I am going on top my submission. What happened to all my schoolwork? I had it all open. Do you have access to my
hmm
quiz questions?
I believe
Okay,
so. Yeah.
okay. So I am going to go there, and I believe it's the one I did not do so good. Actually, I was happy that we were able to appeal,
hmm
but I think that makes my appeal skills, it sharpens it,
hmm
which is, I'm really grateful for that. But then I have to understand why the question I didn't get it right. And I'm
Yeah.
still pondering on that. And
Okay.
so I'm going to, I have to reopen this. Okay, I'm in business. I am going to the quiz. And while I'm doing that, I do have a question on the current case assignment. And I've been researching how to cite the name,
Mm,
and
mhm,
and I know you answered me on the discussion board, but I'm still a little bit unsure of it, and I don't
mhm,
like to feel that way. And so I did some research because the citation is a Supreme Court ruling.
mhm.
It, it does it follow the same pattern as a trial court ruling or a court of appeals ruling? That's my question.
Yeah, and the citation,
Yes.
it usually does for the state, and that's the confusion here for a lot of us. You're not alone. Each state decided sometimes over 100, sometimes 200 years ago, the way that they wanted to cite to their own cases, and they don't follow all the time some
Uh-huh.
set standard that the federal government hands down or something.
Okay.
Part of our federal system, right?
Right.
But typically within the state, that Michigan example you gave, instead of it being a Supreme Court, you'd make some sort of designation for Court of Appeals or trial court, depending on the state, and that would be the only difference in the way that the line was cited for the most part.
So you'll notice in my submission, I did two files. I didn't know how to delete one of them, and it won't let me delete it. So
Oh,
I'm sorry for that.
that's
So
fine.
the only difference I think is the case name. So I put the Supreme Court case after the defendant's name with a comma, defendant's
hmm
name, comma, and then the Supreme Court, and then the case file after that. And I ended up with the year. The other one doesn't even have it in there. And so I was kind of stuck. So I said, oh, well, I'll do the two, and then I'll talk with you today, and then we'll get some opinions on that. So because this is a different type of citation, I really couldn't find anything. And like you said, I did search the Michigan State website to see how they did their citation, and they
Hmm.
had a lot of different patterns of
Mm.
requirement. So that
Yeah,
was
some
interesting.
yeah, some of the older states they even have changed along the way, which makes it even worse. Um,
Yeah.
the one book that I mean, if legal is your future or part of your future, um, and you want it to continue, you know you should invest in I think it's about a $15 um, paperback book that's called I think it's still called the Legal Blue Book
The legal blue
and
book.
Blue Book, yeah. If you look, if you search for it, it's called the Blue Book. I think it's the Legal Blue Book, but it usually goes by Blue Book. Every law student gets one of those when they start law school, and it literally goes state by state and even many countries on the exact citation format for anything from case law to
Hmm.
academic research to it's kind of the legal practitioner's guide to citations.
Okay, I made a note of that. And yes, part of my ambition is to get into that field. I was talking with our prosecutor here. His name is Mitch Roth. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
weaknesses that they have in the county government here is they need a legal clerk that has computer information technology background because there's a lot of fraud going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so they want to build their case files around jargon that relates to computer information. And they don't have a staff member on board and they're just aching for me to finish. So,
Mm,
yeah, so he's holding a spot and the funding for that position.
that's
Meanwhile,
great.
I know Mitch is a good friend of mine, and he got in again after this election. So I'm very fortunate. But we do talk on the side in the hallways. And even though I'm holding a really low key job right now, I really prefer it that way since I'm crashing most of my classes right now.
Yeah.
And we do talk about certain things in the computer world that makes it available for the offense to happen,
Mm,
and then they can build their case on that it's not all computer error. Somebody
oh,
had to manually put these type of um, programs into the system in order to
mhm,
take your identity or in order to steal corporate information, and it had to be
mhm,
programmed by a person, and each person has an identity or a signature that they use when they do the programming. So this
mhm,
is the kind of stuff that I talk about with the prosecutor, and before
mm,
we even get there, he has to pass, which he's doing right now. He has to change the counting codes. He has to change some of the basics, create the foundations of the language in law in order for us to in the future prosecute. So that's what he's doing on his end, creating all the basics, and then I'm trying to get my stuff in right now. But he's been helping me. We talked just this past week to help me with my briefs. I don't want it to get too wordy. I think this last one I submitted, I didn't want to go over a page and a half, and I'm getting to the point where I'm getting wordy again. So I'm trying really hard to condense it for you.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I have my quiz from the last one that I took, and I think it was exam 3.
Mhm.
And so we're going to have to visit that. And one
Okay.
of the things that I'm not going to um, what they call that, um, appeal my answers. I've done that already. I'm very happy with the grade
Okay.
um, after the appeal. It's the wording in the exam itself.
Okay.
So let's start with um, number 2. It says that's the Boeing contract.
Okay. And this is exam 3, you said?
Yes, yes. It's my worst
Okay.
one yet.
I'm just pulling it up. Yeah. And there's always going to be one, right?
Yes.
So
So
exam 3. Okay. So I'm just pulling that up.
And then the other one on exam three was,
I'm not sure why my computer's so slow. Here we go. Okay. Okay. This was the one with the crushed toast company, and you're talking about question 2. It sounds like, right? The Boeing enters a
yes.
contract. Okay. Yeah, I've got that
Okay.
pulled up.
So when I read this one, I was thinking of contract and tort, and that
Hmm.
was in chapter 19.
Hmm.
But then I had to remember exams are based upon the unit study.
Hmm.
And so in this question, I had to rethink it. And when I looked at the choices and I looked at what um, Boeing did with because it says it's almost nearly complete, on their part to
Yeah.
give the 100 jets, and then before the cancellation of the contract. And so this is my thinking. What if Boeing cannot sell? Okay, cancel the contract because the question says Boeing can cancel the contract. I didn't press that because in my thinking, Boeing didn't. Why would Boeing want to cancel the contract when it was the Air Force who canceled the contract? So I said that's not a possibility. Then the other one was Boeing can recover damage from Boeing. Boeing can't recover damage from itself because they want the
Yeah.
money.
That was a
So
that
it,
was a misprint.
yeah,
It should be
so
recovery damages from Air Force.
right. And because the um, question was very specific,
Hmm.
what Boeing can do. Now, in it, I'm looking at this if I was a legal clerk. If I saw wording like this, and my attorney I'm working for asked me to make a brief on this, I would have to make a brief exactly what he needs me to do. So I could not answer B, C, or D. So my only
Yeah.
possible leftover answer was A, which I got it wrong anyway. So that was the reason why I appealed this because it was
Hmm.
a very specific. My thinking to this is to you, maybe in the future we can redesign this question for
Yeah.
the
No,
future students.
I'll send a note to the course creator. Unfortunately, as instructors, we only have so much authority to change things.
Right.
I mean, I can change, but clearly C is wrong. It was worded wrong. Recover damages from Boeing. They're not
Right.
going to recover against themselves. On B, I think in this case, you are applying your judgment rather than just simply looking objectively at what Boeing can or can't do.
Okay.
So clearly you'd be insane to just cancel the contract unless maybe Boeing's thinking, well, we'll cancel the contract because we certainly don't want to make the U.S. government mad. They're our biggest,
Yes.
customer.
Yes.
So let's just cancel it. Let's stop work on this. Yes, we're almost done, but we can still, although we're canceling with them, we can still keep these plans and the product in shape and maybe sell it to someone else. Um, once you start getting moral judgments in mind, like, well, we can't sell it to the Russians, or why would they be stupid to cancel it?
Yes.
You're
To
getting you're applying a judgment that's
okay.
probably right, but it's not the legal. It's not what the question's asking for.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the tutorial videos that you show because um, one of
Hmm.
the attorneys, I think it's Sister Hurley,
Yeah.
I really admire a woman who can present the topics and interestingly. And I find her interesting to watch and listen. I probably watched her tutorial like 6 times already
Yeah, she's
and try
good.
to mimic her facial expression and her tone of voice. I thought
Hmm.
she was really effective. So the next
She's the course creator, by the way.
oh, really?
Yeah, she's the one that created this entire course, and she worked in the we were in a singles ward together like 15, 20 years ago in Portland,
Oh,
but we both got married to someone else, and she went to Idaho and has been teaching in business law this same course
mhm.
in the traditional brick and mortar classroom for I think about 14 years. And then she's now, because she has young children, she went full time online. But I'm just part time online. But I really respect her too. She's got a really good way of simplifying things, and
Yes, she
she's
really
good.
does.
Mhm.
And I really appreciate working with people who are being mentoring me and they're members of the church. This is such an awesome experience I'm going through.
Yeah.
The next one is I'm going to scroll all the way down
Hmm.
to um, question 19.
Okay.
Now, I
It's the one
know
on
that
Janice.
Monica, yeah, I was listening to your hangouts on air and some of the
Hmm.
um, um, different points of view about this question. And so
Hmm.
I think I sided with Monica because it was like, I know it's about the bankruptcy,
Hmm.
and bankruptcy could mean your entire portfolio,
Hmm.
or is bankruptcy only to the foreclosure on the house? And the way I understood it was it's for her entire portfolio. That's why she's filing bankruptcy. She can't afford anything.
Right. That's right. For this question, you're absolutely right. It doesn't just hone in on the foreclosure like that other question did.
Yes. So when they foreclose and they do the distribution on something like this, and she doesn't, it doesn't seem like she has enough because it says a 10 million in medical bills.
Hmm.
What happens to the rest of the bank? Um, she doesn't have enough. That's why she's going bankrupt. Does the
What happens
government
the other?
forgive the 10 million?
Hmm. Yeah, they will. And
Oh,
it's woven into the interest rates that we all pay on credit cards and other things. As more and more people go bankrupt, you'll see sometimes interest rates on sometimes credit cards will want to gouge, well, to get their money from other people, and you'll see them raise their credit card rates, which they're allowed to do, and the market just tells people, don't, stay away from that Discover card or whatever, it's 22%. Go for these that are taking more risk and maybe haven't been burned as much on bankruptcies of the people they screen for their cards. So
okay.
it's a real market dynamic as to what interest rate you're going to get. Um, because the lower interest rate cards, they're going to screen you more carefully and not just give cards to anybody they think might go bankrupt and hurt them.
Now, why is the answer all of them?
The answer is the first one, chapter 7, only if Janice earns less than the median income in her state, or chapter 13 if she wants to do kind of a restructuring with her creditors.
Okay, because the way it scored me, it goes, I got a red X for the first one, then a green check mark for the second, third, and the fourth. So I got confused with the correcting
Hmm.
on this one.
So tell me that again. So the way it graded it, it gave you credit for the first one, but not but and you clicked the first one.
Okay, I click only chapter 13. And
Okay.
so, of course, I got the red X for not choosing number one, but
Okay.
I got a green check for the second, a green check for my choice and a green check for chapter 9.
Right, which should mean you got those three right.
Yes. And I didn't choose number 2 or 4. So-
Right, which weren't correct. So the
oh,
fact that you
okay.
didn't choose it, you got credit for it because the system said, "Hey, good job, you didn't check those two because they aren't available to her."
Yeah, because the way it was checked, it wasn't consistent through the whole entire test. So the
Mm,
rest of the test had a blue
mm,
arrow telling me the correct
mm,
answer and then red X when I made a wrong answer. So that was the only question that had green checks and
mm.
answers I did not answer.
I wonder why it did that. Did it give you a blue arrow on the chapter 13 one or just a green check?
It gave me a blue arrow on chapter 7, first line, and a blue arrow on chapter 13.
Okay, which were the correct answers. Um,
Right.
but it
But
but
it
it gave you green marks on the second, third, and fourth because those are the ones you either checked properly or didn't check properly.
correct.
And you're saying that that doesn't usually happen on the other
No,
questions?
my other questions, it's either a green check or a blue arrow with a red check.
How
So that was
many
the
how many how many questions say mark all that apply? Because this is usually we don't have a lot of questions that do that, or have you seen a number of them that kind of grade it differently?
this was the first quiz that I've taken that the marking was inconsistent throughout the exam. So
Hmm,
when you were able to release the scoring,
mhm,
so that
hmm,
the ones that I got correct had the green checks.
yeah.
The ones that I got wrong had either a red X
Mhm,
and no blue arrow, or a red X with a blue arrow and a green check, or
hmm,
like that one particular it graded it checked green checked red X and blue arrows throughout the question. So I'm going,
hmm.
whoa, wait a minute. I
Yeah,
will take a screenshot of that and send it to you. Maybe
yeah, that would help.
you can have IT double check the coding on that line. Okay,
Yeah, and
and
I'm going to
then
send it to Casey Hurley as well because she's the one that sets up the way that it automatically grades, so she might have an opinion on why it did that differently.
and I'll send you the one where it says I got it completely right, and then one where it shows a red X with a blue arrow, and then
Yeah,
one with a just a blue arrow, and then one with a blue arrow, green check, and a red X only. You see
that
what
would
I'm
help.
saying?
Yeah, I do see that, and it would help because we don't
Yes.
see. I don't, as an instructor, I don't see the student view, so we
Okay.
I try to be really lenient with the appeals because I'm aware that there are still some bugs like this that
Yeah, it's okay. I know that it's wrong. I research it and then I put my best feet forward and try to appeal the best way I know how.
sure,
Okay.
yeah,
Now I am going to the textbook, and I think this is important for me to understand the difference between estoppel and then in our new chapter that we're reading, I believe it's in number 7, it talks about estoppel by um, I just read it. So I'm trying to understand the difference between the two estoppels. Let me find it.
okay.
I thought I had it bookmarked.
Promissory estoppel, and then probably promissory estoppel is one.
Yeah,
Maybe
here's
does
a
that sound familiar?
partnership by estoppel, and then the promissory estoppel. That's correct. So we had two estoppels, and I'm a little bit confused between the two.
Okay. Okay. And was there a specific like question that came up on an exam, or was it just generally what?
What I was reading. And so it says here, this partnership by estoppel works only for third parties. And then there's that. Is that something like a promissory estoppel?
On the partnership by estoppel?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm on
So,
page 331 in our text. And I
okay.
was reading that, and then a light went off and go, wait a minute. I just got a definition for estoppel, and then I got this estoppel definition, and I'm going, okay, now I'm really spinning on the
Yeah.
merry-go-round.
Okay. So
Sorry.
there's so no, that's fine. This is a these legal words, especially when it gets into estoppel and Latin, res ipsa loquitur, and some of these get pretty challenging. But the easiest way to remember promissory estoppel
Okay.
is promissory estoppel and partnership by estoppel are legal claims, um, or defenses that a party can use. So they really show up in court is where they show up. You usually don't see them much in contracts, for example, just because they're meant to be a claim that if you and I, for example, if you made a promise to me that you would sell me your boat,
Okay.
and I then not only I didn't even make a down payment to you, and let's say even that there wasn't even a contract. But I go ahead by virtue of that promise, and I buy a massive dock and a big warehouse to big covering to put the boat under, and I and you see some of you are evidence to some of these things that I'm doing, and then you come back and just laugh at me and say, I'm just kidding, I'm not going to sell you that boat.
Huh.
My I would what would I say? I would say, okay, I can either walk away and cry, or I can go to a court and argue that we had a deal.
Agreement. Right.
Your claim would be, hey, I didn't sign any document with this person, and I didn't even take a down payment. I said that I would sell him my boat. I made that promise, but I took the promise back because it's not in writing, and I didn't take any money from him. My argument to the court would be promissory estoppel. I relied on your promise to my detriment, and there's evidence that you were aware of it. And so what would happen is a court would have to decide, do I just say there was no contract and tell Dan to go away, Brother Christensen to go away, or do I say now that have to happen because of promissory estoppel? Maxi saw what there was some evidence that you saw what was happening, that you knew I was detrimentally relying on that promise, and even though we
Right.
have no contract and no down payment, it's unfair to send Dan away, Brother Christensen away into the wilderness with nothing, because Maxi did evil here. She something she knew that I was building this big covering, and I bought a dock, and I bought life preservers and everything. So oftentimes a court will use promissory estoppel to throw the book at you and say,
Right.
I'm not going to force you to sell him the boat, but you're definitely going to pay him back or help him somehow, get that pay the difference between what he has to sell all that boat equipment for and what he loses.
That's correct. Now, if we take that um, principle of promissory estoppel
Hmm.
and then look at, and so this is what I'm thinking, a partnership by estoppel. So is it because I'm learning that type of definition, when I read the partnership estoppel, does this mean too that the partners doesn't have an agreement, but they're doing something together that creates a partnership? And it specifically talks about a third partner? Is it like a silent partner that they're trying to help me understand partnership by estoppel?
Maxi, you are spot on with
Really?
your gut feel. Partnership by estoppel. Um, it does, the text may talk about a third party or other things. I think just make it more simple than that, because I've seen even two partner by estoppel situations where, you asked me a long time ago, over email or somewhere in one of your posts, whether obligations, were about, whether, I think it was something about accountability. Remember
Right,
that question
right,
you raised?
right,
You obviously have a good business acumen, Maxi. You have more of a business acumen than others. And so
right,
the way you should think about estoppel by partnership is exactly where you're going, which is promissory estoppel applies to anyone anywhere. But
right,
in a business context, partnership by estoppel is a subset of that, where two parties, Maxi and Dan, are working together.
right,
Um, I'm starting to pay, your debts, you're starting to pay mine as we start a company up. And then later on, I say, we don't have a partnership. We don't even have a business. And I walk away with most of the money. You
right,
could argue, we didn't have a deal. My argument, if you took me to court, my argument would be, we had no contract. There's nothing here. Your argument would be, wait a
right.
minute, we had a partnership by estoppel here.
Estoppel. Okay,
And here's the evidences of it. You were paying my debts, I was paying yours. We were building this together. We assumed all the rights and obligations together. And then you walked away with most of the money. How is that fair to me?
that's
Uh,
correct.
and that's why a court is stuck, because before estoppel, there was no argument. If you didn't have a document, you were out. And so you now have this argument. It's almost like a common law marriage, right? We lived
Right,
together 7 years. We
right.
paid. It's the same idea. So I think your gut feel is exactly on, Maxi. That's where you should be thinking.
And then if we applied that thinking to the case brief now,
Hmm.
the two people got together, they never formally formed that partnership, but then one takes the other one to court. I was amazed that they didn't use partnership by estoppel. Nobody mentioned that. But so this is where I got that doubt. With all the legal minds behind this case and going to the supreme level,
Hmm.
why didn't they mention promissory by estoppel? I mean, partnership by estoppel. Wouldn't, because they did prove the partnership, even though in appeal court they didn't formally file it or use their name partnership between each other. So okay, fine, they ruled in the defendant's name. Then the plaintiff said, no, no, I'm going to take this higher. So he went higher with it, but still nobody mentioned partnership by estoppel. And this is where this stuck with me all this time.
Yeah, it's bothersome, and the reason why a lot of people don't use estoppel is because it's a weak argument.
Um,
Compared to other things, it's probably the weakest one. There used to, in jolly old England 500 years ago, under Blackstone and after the Magna Carta was signed, there was equity and courts of justice.
mhm,
There were two different kinds of courts. One was called a court of justice, and that was where you had a deal, you had a contract, you had evidence, strong evidence that was indisputable, and you could prove it. So you'd take your case to a judge or magistrate, and you'd push it in a court of justice. For people who had bad arguments or weak arguments but just wanted mercy, some sort of mercy, they called them courts of equity. Don't ask me why. You're a deep thinker, and you're going to think yourself to death if you think, well, why would they have two separate court systems, and including the appellate courts? They did
right,
it because poor people, it was their only recourse sometimes to come in and say, please, judge, I know I haven't paid on my rent for 12 months, but I've had two sick children. I'm dying of starvation. I'm doing the best I can. And they would throw themselves on the mercy of the court, literally a court of equity, to hold at least almost like a chapter 13,
Right.
let's give some mercy to this person. And oftentimes the landlord would try to drag him into the court of justice so they could throw him into debtor's prison or whatnot. But anyway, estoppel grew up in the court of equity. It was a place where if Dan had a claim against Maxi and I had no contract because I was too dumb to enter into a contract with you, and I had no down payment for something, and I had nothing else, I would go throw my estoppel argument to a court of equity and say, please, this is unfair. Another court of equity argument is quantum meruit. You might have heard of.
Quantum.
It's
Quantum.
a legal term meaning if nothing else, this person's benefiting from this and I'm not. And it's unfair that she's meriting getting a quantity of merit out of this and I'm not, out of our relationship. Please hear the facts and please give me some mercy here. And our courts in the US merged the Court of Equity and Justice. We decided and under the Constitution, we didn't want two different court systems, one for mercy and one for justice, rising up. I'm only telling you this because I will confuse all of our other students, but
Yeah. But
I
I
think you
understand what you're
I think
saying.
you can handle it. Yeah, because these arguments, if you look at them, some arguments we have today in our system are very much, please, I'm throwing myself on the mercy of the court. Please, whenever we hear
Right.
that, in jolly old England, that would have been, you only go to the Court of Equity, because Court of Justice would have thrown the gavel at you and said, why are you here? You have no contract. You have nothing to prove.
And I
Um,
think the difference too between the two courts is not only because of uh, factual legal matters.
mhm.
The other one is more of an emotional with no foundation, legal foundation. They're just pleading their hearts out. And I think back then, that's why they had the different two court systems. Today,
Yeah,
because we have evolved in a society where we needed to have foundations in our case, so we had to have the facts. We had to have the facts backed up with other facts and case law. So it would work with the judge to say, okay, there was already a ruling on this by a justice. I'm in a lower court. I'm going to go with the higher court because we're structured that way. And I
yeah,
understand that. So I am glad that we don't have court of equity, to tell you the truth. We'll be tied up in court forever, and and it would mismatch the legal system, because one would say one thing while the other say, well, here's all the proof. We can side this way, or we can make a decision in this instant. And I don't know if you get that, but I
yeah,
I think that I love the way things are going like this, and I think it can even get better as we get more
yeah,
technically involved. That was a good point. Thank you for straightening that out, because I go, hey, wait a minute. With our current case, they should have mentioned that, but now I understand why they didn't, because it's a weak presentation on their part. I did
yeah,
another part of the reading. I do understand corporate structure. At one point in my life, I held a company called Presidential Corporation, and we were on the verge of penny stocks. And I created that company. I created the DBAs under it. I understand articles of incorporation and partnership and all that. So I hope I do really good on this exam coming up when it comes to corporate structuring. And
yeah,
the thing I was watching was um, Sister Hurley mentioned the voting rights. When you have your uh, shares, you have 55% invested
yeah,
in the company, and then you want to get rid of one of your board of directors. And then she talked about straight and then quantum. Was it
yeah. Quantum meruit. Mhm.
yeah. So when you mentioned that, I go, oh, that's like the voting rights. Is it, to
Mhm.
my understanding, that, or accumulated,
Oh,
if you
cumulative rights. Yeah. Mhm.
if you have 10 directors and your shares, let's say you had 10 shares. And so your shares for straight, you can vote 10, 10, 10, 10, 10,
Yeah.
which equals 100. But say if you use the quantum, you can use your whole 100 for one person.
Right.
Is
Yep.
that the difference with the straight and the quantum?
Versus
Right.
cumulative. Yeah,
Yeah, cumulative.
that's right. That's exactly right. That's the way
Okay.
that works. Yep.
So if you are, so this way you can outvote the one who has 51 or 55% of the company.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's the only reason it's important is because now a lot of companies have said, we don't accept this kind of voting because they don't want you to outvote. Either they want you to be able to outvote, one board member or something, so they'll put in their corporate documents, we accept cumulative voting. You can vote 100 share. If you have 1,000, if there's 1,000 shares and you own 100 of them, you can put all 100 shares towards one candidate, or they'll say, we as the board are scared you're going to vote us out and ruin our
Right.
livelihood. So we're going to put in the corporate documents. If you invest in our company, that's great, and you get voting rights, but you can only do it. You can only vote this way, and it gives them a little bit of extra safety. Um,
Yeah. So that has to be written into the articles or in the corporate docs.
right. If it's not in there, then common
Oh,
law would apply, and common law would allow you to vote your shares any way you want.
okay. That's important note to remember. And um, one more thing, I I'm looking at my notes. Um, okay, this is the term mere aggregate of an individual partners. So I hope I'm saying that right. I don't understand that. So it says partnership is either a distinct entity or a mere aggregate of individual partners. To me, it sounds like it's contradicting.
Okay. Um, yeah, let's see. So partnerships are really hard because basically the rule is if you have no corporate structure,
Right.
like you haven't said that you're a sole proprietorship, well, sole proprietorship's kind of the same as partnership, but just with one person. But if you
Mhm.
haven't said we're a C corp, we're an S corp, we're an LLC, we're a
Oh,
501c3, you know, if you haven't filed it that way, then a court, when presented with a problem, a court has to decide first and foremost what kind of organization you are, so they know how to apply the law. And if you haven't filed, see, so many businesses, people just start, janitorial, name your business, snow cone operator, people selling candy on the
right,
street.
right,
And then inevitably there's a dispute between a couple of people who are sharing money, and then one person runs off with all the money and leaves the other one with all the debt.
right.
And so they go to the only place they can go is the court for redress. And the court says, did you file an S corp? No. Did you file a C corp? No. Did you file an LLC? No. Were you a 501c 1 through 17 charity? No. Well, then I guess you are a partnership between the two of you. And
Wow.
so as a partnership, we're going to have to assume that you two and your snow cone operation company, walking street to street selling snow cones with little machines that you both bought together, pooling your money, that you're a partnership. And when partnership laws apply, very little, it's the Wild West. You guys have to take on the debts of one another. That's not to say that if one person buys a house, the other has to buy the house, but anything devoted to that company that
Hmm.
you pooled your money for, Maxi, you may have paid $1,000, and I only put $5 into it, but seen as, well, you must have either been dumb enough to put your 15,000 into it when I only put five, or you wanted to do that. because I would be working harder, or I would be managing, I would be doing all the sales, and you would just be kind of the silent partner. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So my thinking is that either you're a partner or you're not. Either way, when it comes down to distribution of, say you're just going through a dissolution, you're pulling the company apart, you're
Hmm.
disbanding it, and when it comes down to allocating or balancing the financial statements, like the debts, like you're talking about, and then
Hmm.
whatever's left over, it gets distributed among the shareholders. When it comes down to that, and you didn't legally form, you still can take your silent partner or your partner to court to help you with the excess of the finances, or like we were just
Yeah.
talking about, partnership of estoppels. So now I've got it going up here, and the concepts are good. I like it. Thank you.
Okay. I hope it helps. But yeah.
It does help, especially on that last exam. I will send that to you. Um, I think Brian is asking for a group right now. He's in my computer class. I've been coding our program, our game till midnight, but I love it. But your wife's birthday today. Happy
Yeah.
Valentine.
So I'm gonna take her probably, I don't know, to Sedona or Las Vegas. I haven't decided yet for the weekend, but we'll see what
That would be
happens.
great. That
Yeah,
would be great. It's called a pre-holiday activity before she gets busy.
that's
I
right.
know I got 2 turkeys home already. So one for the church and one for donation. I always sponsor a family every year, and depending on the budget, I can do 2 families, the entire meal. And so, and I do it silently. I don't want the bishop to tell them who it comes from. I don't need that. Just need to sponsor, and that's good enough.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today, Brother Christensen. This was great to do. I'm glad I was off today on Friday.
Yeah, I'm glad so too, and glad we could meet. Thanks for being flexible with me.
Oh, yes, I think you're great. I love hearing you talk when you talk about case law and law. It's really nice, and how they chatter. Sometimes, here's my situation at work. The PC I have, I am internet restricted. So
Mm.
when I come to work and I do group at work, I have to bring my personal laptop. And
Oh,
some days I didn't bring it with me. I see your email and I go, oh, shucks, he's doing it today. I didn't bring my laptop. And
oh, yeah.
I work in a security cage. So I have cameras around me. So we can't do it in my cage. So that's why I have to go in the storeroom
Oh,
where there's
well,
cameras.
you're doing so well, and boy, you're just. I feel so bad that some of the when we changed to 3.0 and we went with Google Community and everything, we've all been kind of struggling to find
Me
out
too.
where our students are posting things, and to see how many posts you made with just silent crickets, chirping in the background and nobody responding, including myself. I felt so bad, and so I'm going to try to be more on top of that, and I appreciate
Yeah.
you kind of bringing it to my attention. So
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. At one point, I felt really bad. I go, gee, not
yeah,
even Mass is responding. What's up? But
yeah.
the chirping in the background. Here's the note on that. Long time ago, Mexicans came to the islands and they believe in this little frog called a coqui frog. Well, because the islands don't have a species that kills those things or eats
Yeah.
it, it mass produces itself, especially on this island because of the heat and the moist
Hmm.
climate. It's perfect for their habitation. So they have multiplied where it's becoming an infestation. And everybody is trying something from coffee grinds to, and we don't want to do too much insecticides because it gets into our water system here.
Yeah.
And so I have to close up my house every evening because it's so
Mm.
loud. Even when I'm doing a
Oh,
recording, it's so loud. And I have to tell people it's not my fan, it's the Koki's outside. And we've
uh,
tried everything, my husband and I, and we're hoping the chicken that's wild chickens will go and eat them. But there's so many of them that they're tired of that protein.
yeah.
And I would
Interesting.
not eat their eggs. So, and my
I had no
cat,
idea.
yeah, my cats are just so tired of them already. They don't chase them anymore.
Don't they? So they're just all over the place.
So
Wow.
it's Koki and Coqui, and you can go online and check all the different type of species. Sad, really
Yeah.
sad for all of us homeowners here.
Yeah.
Um, well, I better let you go. Thank you so much. You've been a great help.
Good. Well, let's do this as many times you need by the end of the year. And I think you're a great student and you'll be
And
fine. We'll
and
make sure of it.
I am going to get my bachelor's in business admin. I just need to finish this first BA up, but I'm working. I just put on the assistant admin certificate on my grad planner. I just finished my accounting, and some of these classes go towards that
Hmm,
degree.
okay.
So I know about business.
Yeah.
It's
Sounds like
it
it.
would be it would be an easy for thing for me. That's why I took the hardest one first.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you.
All right, Brother Christensen, have a good weekend.
Okay. You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha. Bye, Maxi.